This is young Jason's tree. How many years ago was it, Jason, we started it?
About 4 or 5 years ago.
Have you ever seen a man brought to tears? You should have seen Jason that day. When he had this lovely Brubstyle. And he said, what shall we do with this? And it was a flat top. And I looked at it, and I looked at him and I thought, no, is he going to faint or is he going to I said, well, there's only one thing you can do with it. So I took the saw out and put a saw right down the middle between the two. But over the years, it's looked fantastic. It's come really good. Again, broomstiles are very difficult trees in Australia to grow because of the heat factor. They grow too quickly. This is an English elm. Suits the style. And it's Chinese elm, is it? Sorry. Yeah, Chinese elm it is too. Suits the style and perfect. But carving it out, what a difference it makes. Looks so good. We removed 4 branches yesterday. We took one off here and I pulled away, so we've now got a bit of a jagged look down the front here, then some more from the back. But it's just, I think it's really a great tree. This root here was actually dead. This one down here. So again, we've done a little bit of illusion by putting the moss over there. It's broken the effect of the dead wood just looking like a stick hanging down. So it almost matches this sort of root moulding in. And using the moss to help fill in the gaps, it really starts to look good. But the whole presentation, I think, is great. You all like that, don't we?
Very good.
So again, it's the start of taking it to the next level. So as this grows, if it keeps pinching it back, you get really good ramification on these branches again. The thing with elms, the best thing to do with elms is throughout the autumn, as you're going into autumn, is to prune it back quite short into the profile. If you let long branches grow, they're going to die. The smaller ones back in there will die. The tree will try to keep the longer branches alive at the risk of losing all the small ones. So always try and keep your elms trimmed in the autumn if you can. Metamorphosis of a few times in its life, but now we're taking it to the next stage. It is a bit over-potted, we're aware of that, the pot's a bit big for the tree, but it doesn't matter, it's given room for the tree to grow. So what we're starting to do now is to, because it's a very open, sparse tree, we've removed quite a few of the branches, as you can see, making gins out of them. So rather just cut them short, we've kept them long and spindly, because what this is doing is opening up the gaps so you can see the foliage in between. We've cut off ones going forward as well, but using the branches to create the illusion of that nice windswept look about the tree. It's got a bit more peeling of bark to do yet, but that'll happen in time.
What's the colour? What's the black one? Is that natural, the bark, or have you put that on?
No, it's just wet.
Just wet.
Just wet, yeah, just dark. Yeah, that's just dark. A very dark bark. This variety is Juniper procumbens, which is one of the earlier type of junipers that we used to get, and they do grow. They're a ground cover tree. Basically, they grow along the ground. They cover the ground, so they naturally want to grow this way. So I think it's suited. It needs a shallow pot. If it were mine, I wouldn't use this pot, but I would use one as shallow, but oval. A nice shallow oval pot will really make the tree stand out and look quite interesting. Again, very little moss, but lots of rough gravel on the top to make it look rough, because you don't want a very soft countryside feel to a rough looking tree. You want a windswept look where the trees may be growing along the coastline, so you want to emulate that. And in a round, oval, an oval shallow pot, you can emulate that rough coastline effect just by using rocks and little bits of moss and jagged rocks to give it that look. This branch here is just a balanced branch, but by sweeping it to one side, it's not all been finished wiring yet, is it? It's a bit slack, you didn't finish it all. but by sweeping it all out, it gives that real nice windswept look, all going in the one direction. So all these branches here are coming around again to fly in the same direction. But whilst you do that, you do need a bit of a counterbalance too. You need a bit of sparseness too. You don't need thick, big bunches of foliage. You need very sparse foliage, but very, very fine looking. And it's important with a style like this to have a lot of space. This is where a lot of space is very important. Space plays an awful big part in the design of your tree, because the space gives you the feeling of as Joe Narcor always used to say, somewhere for the birds and the butterflies to get in between. So you need the spacing. Not all trees will have that, but the more space you can get, the more interesting it becomes. Full space is the space taken up by the foliage. So there's negative space, there's positive space. Positive space is, of course, where the foliage is. That's the positive space. But negative space, I don't like to use the word negative space. To me, it's not negative space. Space is space. And space is no?
A void.
A void. It's a void. And negative space means you're in the abyss. That's a negative space. So to me, it's just using this space around the tree to show off what's in the positive space. Great looking tree. In the future, like a couple of months of these grow so quickly. Never in New South Wales, these are banned from being planted, and particularly close to a house, because you'll find that your house is going to end up on top of the tree in about 3 years, so you never plant them too close to a house. But once this top gets wide out, and some of these branches are rearranged slightly, now we can look at it in the full mass. Yesterday it was in a foam box, today it's in a pot. We had a choice of pots to use, whether we used this pot or a deeper pot. But the sheer weight of this tree and the balance of it is such, the shallow the pot exemplifies the tree a lot more than using a deeper pot. A deeper pot takes away the look of how powerful the tree really is. I know this is not big enough, but just a visual effect of a deeper pot doesn't do it any justice, I don't think. So the shallow pot was the winner for the day, as far as I'm concerned. Now, if I can just let you into a bit of a secret, another one. But you wouldn't have known I hadn't told you, would you?
No.
That's a little bit of cheating. That's fun.
Cosmetic surgery.
But it doesn't matter. Look, the public are never going to know that. But what it does, it gives you that feeling of the trees really got a powerful root structure. It will get there, it will grow its own root structure very quickly. But the effect of just using a bit of muck, a moss over it, I purposely left it off there so you could see it later on, that it's really given this tree a really powerful look from here. It's really a dominant look of the tree. But what beautiful motion in the trunk in such a small area. What, 80 centimetres perhaps? 600. 600, yeah, it's great. Good branches, and these do grow so rapaciously, you've got to be on at them all the time. But this weekend, really got stuck in, wired it all out. Great 2-tree setting. What I like about it is they're both going in the same direction, but the trees are not exactly the same. This point here, quite close together, which is good, then it widens out, and then they drift away from each other. More dominant tree here, slightly smaller here. A lot of pinching back between now and now the end of the month, we'll give you a good 2 months to grow all the growth back again for the show. So I think it's a really, really good 2-tree setting. Most 2-tree settings are, one is much taller than the other, where you get one really high one, a really low one. But this one works for me really well. It's a really good setting of 2 trees. Well positioned in the pot, nice pot. Can't fault it. It's good.
Do you think it needs to be in a shallower pot to set it off a bit more?
Maybe not. I wouldn't rush out and buy one right now.
I wouldn't need to. I've got one that'd suit. It's almost the same colour, but it's about half the depth, about the same size even.
Well,
but I was thinking, even if I just put it into a shallower pot for the show and then put it back into a big pot for afterwards.
Well, I'll tell you another thing too with the Japanese and now the Chinese as well. The Chinese have become very wealthy. They're going to Japan and buying all the Chinese pots back to take back to China. All these, because in Japan they bought a lot of the Meiji pots and took them over to Japan. Now that Japan are broke, they're selling them back to the Chinese. And you see these, in any of the books you look over there, you'll see these beautiful bonsai and these beautiful pots. But the pots are only in there for the show. When they come out again, they're back in cheaper pots. Because those pots are so valuable, they can't afford the risk of growing them and getting knocked over or knocked off, whichever. So, you know, so changing the pots around is quite okay. And you put in the best pot you have for the show. So if you want to put into a shower pot, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong. In our show in Sydney, we have a section, which I'm sure you have here too, I can't remember, but we call it Beautiful Beginnings. So trees which have just started off for, say, novices or people who don't want to put their tree in with the big boys, but have a little section. That always works really well too, because people can see, you know, the public who could be interested in getting into bonsai too, they also want to see something else, not just...
it's more likely to encourage them to start.
Encourage them to start. So this is going to be another good pine. I forget, who's this pine? I've forgotten. Hughes, isn't it? That's right, yeah. That's right, of course. Another good radiata. Nothing wrong with radiatas. Make great bonsai, great trees, easy to work on, easy to get, particularly around here.
Yeah.
Just needs a bit of digging out.
Silent pine.
Which one?
Silent pine.
Silent, yeah, that's right.
Side of the road.
Side of the road, that's right. But again, it's got the makings of being a really good pine for the future. You know, and they've got to come from somewhere. So it's the side of the better, side of the road. But no, I think radiatas, these will develop into really short, dense pads. So in the future, with a lot of pruning, you get a whole branches with all the new growth like that. Just short little stubs will look all over the branches. But you've got to go through this stage to get to that stage.